What's going on? Welcome back to Off the Schneid. Today we're going to take a look at the New Orleans Saints, talking about their draft picks, draft needs, and picks heading into the 2022 NFL Draft. Free agency is kind of wrapped up. This team shed a crazy amount of salary cap, about over $100 million in cap space they cleared up, and they currently have some room to add some free agents if they'd like. So that was pretty crazy, but we'll get into that. Above me, we got the team needs and then the draft capital that they have heading into the draft. A couple first round picks, which is pretty good for this team. They traded their first next year to get that second pick from the the Eagles. Got birds on the mind here, but so they have the 2 first round picks, second, third, fourth. They got a lot of capital, 4 picks inside the top 100, 3 inside the top 50. That's quality capital for a team that hasn't really had that much in recent years. So they can definitely make some changes to this roster and plan for the future. Once a couple of these contracts start coming off the books that they need to get rid of. But we'll get into that. So let's start at quarterback like we always do. Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton are both here. Obviously, Jameis Winston tore his ACL last year. He's going to come back from that and hopefully be your guy. But realistically, they're only tied to these 2 quarterbacks for this season, and they can move on from both of them after this year. Winston was a 2-year deal, but they can move on from him if they like after this season. We'll see how it all works out. So then that opens the door to, do you draft a quarterback? I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if I do. Obviously, they would probably have to take him with one of those 2 first round selections. For me, it all depends on how they see Sam Howell. That's the guy that I think that they probably have in mind. Do you see Drew Brees in Sam Howell? That's kind of where I feel the Saints are at, and that's how they're looking at him. And will he be there at 49? I think that they're planning to see if he's there at 49. I don't take Sam Howell in the first round personally, and I certainly don't take him with 16 or 19. Do they want to trade back into the late 20s and maybe grab him there? Maybe. For me, I'm personally just sitting and waiting and seeing if he's available at 49. If he is, I grab him. And then, do you see Drew Brees traits in Sam Howell? Some people do. Personally, I don't quite see it, but I could understand why some people do. So there's that. There you go with the quarterback position, and we'll see how it shakes out this year. Andy Dalton can play and can start on this team if they need him to. Obviously, he's done that with a couple teams here and there for the past couple of years as a backup, but at the end of the day, he's a backup quarterback at this point in his career. We'll move to the running back position. Obviously, Alvin Kamara may face a suspension for some shenanigans that happened in a nightclub in Vegas during the Pro Bowl. I'm sure every Saints fan knows about that. So we'll see what happens. He probably does get something, 2, maybe 4 games is probably what we'll see. Hard to really put your finger on it. Who knows what actually happened? We'll let the justice system take that and do with it what they will, and then see what the league might do for, conduct detrimental to the league. Whatever happens there, we'll find that out. But he's still a quality football player. If we're just talking about on the field stuff, very, very, very good football player, and he could do a lot of crazy good things for this team. He caught 81 passes for 3 straight years, and he pushes 1,000 yards rushing. So he's a very quality player. I do think that they definitely bring in a big body, running back. Mark Ingram is still on the roster, but who knows if he'll actually end up making this team. I fully expect them to draft a running back. 3 guys that they've brought in is Dameon Pierce, Hassan Haskins, and Brian Robinson. One of those guys will be available 100% with the second round pick, and at least one of them should be there in the 3rd round at pick 98. They're probably hoping Brian Robinson is the guy, but he might go before that pick. If not, Dameon Pierce or Hassan Haskins can probably be that guy. I like all 3 realistically, and I like all 3 on this team. And fantasy wise, I'm probably taking a look at drafting whoever ends up getting drafted here, because I definitely think that they take a big body pounder between the tackles runner in this year's draft. Tony Jones Jr., Twitter's trying to make him a thing last year, but it's just not going to happen. So he's still on the roster, but I'm not too concerned about him. Move to the tight end position, and, Taysom Hill's obviously still here. He's focusing on the tight end position, but he can play quarterback in a pinch as well. And I'm sure he will line up at quarterback for this team, whether or not he's throwing, running, whatever it is. He's a gadget guy that can do a lot of different things for this team. Like I said, he can throw the ball, he can catch the ball and run it as a, wildcat. type of a quarterback. And then, obviously he can catch the ball, and he's going to play a lot of tight end for this team. So there's a lot of things that a creative play caller can do. Not that Carmichael is that guy, but he's got the ability, and he's got the players with the ability to do some crazy things. And we'll see how that looks and how it works out. But I fully expect him to line up as a quarterback next year, whether he's throwing the ball however much or just catching and running as a wildcat. I think that will more likely be the case, and I think teams will plan for that. And then obviously, like I said, he'll line up at tight end. They'll have a lot of packages for him in the goal line. He's a quality football player to have on your team, and he can do a lot of different things and play on special teams, all kinds of stuff. He's just a quality football player. And then Adam Troutman's there as well, former third round pick. He was my tight end 2, I think he was behind Harrison Bryant that year, but he's a quality tight end that they need him to take that step. Juwan Johnson's still there, Nick Vanette's there. They have the depth that they need. I'm not looking at tight end whatsoever for this team, and we'll see how Taysom Hill looks in that role if he plays it the majority of the time. I think there's going to be a lot more to it for Taysom Hill, but we'll see how it all shakes out. We'll move to the offensive line here. Ryan Ramczyk is one of, if not the best, right tackle in football right now. Cesar Ruiz is a quality player. He can double as a center if need be. Eric McCoy is fine. James Hurst played himself into a starting job. I think that they, how he played last year made them okay with letting Teron Armstead, walk in free agency, which he did. And then he's penciled in here as the starting left tackle and probably does end up playing that role for this team. Andrus Peat has kind of seen his play peter off in the last couple years. You could look at replacing him. He's starting to get a little bit older, and again, his play has not quite been there, and he's never played an entire season for his career, but his contract is just out of control a little bit. It's another one of those contracts that they're looking forward to getting off the books, and there's a few of them, so we'll get there as well in a second. I don't have it up here as a need on the offensive line, but I do think they're going to have to, if not this year, then they'll definitely draft probably a left tackle next year, and then that works as a swing guy. You can kick him inside, whatever it is. I think that they're okay this year, especially with their early picks. I don't think they look at an offensive lineman, but it's definitely something that's going to be in the back of their mind there. Calvin Throckmorton's a guy that played left tackle in college. He's kind of moved around and started a few different places. And then Forrest Lamp is there as well as kind of your swing interior guy. But they're going to have to start thinking about it and address it. Maybe not this year, but 100% I think next year. Let's move to the wide receiver position. Obviously, it starts and ends with Mike Thomas. Michael Thomas, at one point was one of the best wide receivers in football. Hasn't played in almost 2 seasons. He's been a bit of a burden to this team. I think there's mutual interest in him being off this roster, but the contract is obviously a massive holdup. He's now 29 years old. He's only played, 4 seasons, realistically. So, those were 4 very, very good seasons, but you need him to be healthy and to be on the field for this team. We'll see what happens this year. I don't, unless he's hiding another injury that he's going to wait till training camp to get surgery or whatever it is. Again, that was a little bit ridiculous, and I think that really pissed off the Saints as well as their fans, that you waited so long to reveal that you had this injury, and then you get surgery and you're out the entire season. It's kind of frustrating. It really, really is, especially because you missed the majority of the previous season because of another injury. So you gotta be healthy. You gotta be on this team, and that makes this wide receiver core okay. It makes it okay as long as he's on the field and he's a 1,000-yard receiver that you need him to be. I think Marquez Callaway can be a quality number 2 field stretcher type of a guy, and then Traquan Smith has done some good things. He's 400 or 500-yard receiver potentially with the right quarterback, and if you have that help with Michael Thomas. And then formerly Harris, Deontay Hardy, he's that burner, 5'6", returns kicks and everything like that. He can do a lot of gadgety type stuff as well. Lil John Humphrey's still on this team. I do have it as a need though, because I don't trust Michael Thomas to come in and be that guy. I really, really do not. I fully addressed it in this year's draft in the first round with one of those 2 picks. I'm taking a wide receiver if I'm the Saints. I absolutely am. I just do not trust Mike Thomas to come in and be that guy. And if something should happen again and he sits out or whatever it is, I can't rely on Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith, and Lil John Humphrey to get the job done. I just can't. So I have it as my number one need with that running back as well. I think, two of these top 4 picks that they have here, you have to address wide receiver and running back. That's just how I'm looking at it, and that's what I'm doing. Keep an eye out for the mock draft I'll have coming out in about a week, like I said, and we'll see what I have the Saints doing. But I'm probably making those 2 selections, and one of them is going to be a wide receiver. That's for sure. So there's your offense. We'll move over to the defensive side of the ball. This is still Dennis Allen's defense. I think, Chris Richard and another guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, are co-defensive coordinators just by title, realistically, is all it is. This is Dennis Allen's defense. It has been for however long, and it will continue to be, and he'll probably continue to call the defense, as the head coach, much like Mike Tomlin does for the Steelers. But let's talk about this defense. It's not in a bad spot. Marcus Davenport took that step this past season, which you needed him to do. He needed to do, and he did. So that's great. Cameron Jordan's still phenomenal. He's a very, very, very good football player, and he's still getting the job done. So you're okay there with Peyton Turner, first round pick last year, and then Passignon, he's still there. He had I think 4 sacks last year. He can chip in. Carl Granderson can help out. Taco Charlton comes in. He can help out as well. So they're fine at defensive end for me. More than fine at defensive end with Cam Jordan still doing his thing and Davenport taking that step. The defensive line, you could use a guy. David Onyemata, Canadian. Love to see it. He's still there, and he can do a lot of good things. Shy Tuttle's kind of your nose tackle, run stuffer type of a guy, but I think that you can add a guy, and there's a bunch of guys in this year's draft they might look at that, in the first round. Maybe a guy like Jordan Davis would be an interesting fit. Devontae Wyatt's a guy that I really, really like in this year's draft, so maybe I take a guy like that with my 19th overall, 16th overall, maybe, depending on how the draft's going. But again, keep an eye out for the mock draft. That might be something that I think that they do, because I think that that's a good fit and it makes a lot of sense. We'll move it back to the linebacker position. Demario Davis is 33 years old. He's getting up there. He's had a great career. He's barely missed games, but he is getting up there, and he's not going to be able to do it forever. So you're going to have to address that at some point. Pete Werner's there, former second-round pick, and Zach Bond, who fell. I think I mocked Zach Bond as the first round for this team. They ended up getting him in the third, which was great value in my opinion, but he's got to take a step and be one of the guys on this defense. As long, if Pete Werner does as well, I think they're okay at linebacker as long as Demario Davis is on the field. And I don't address it this year, but you're going to have to start thinking about it, like I said, with Demario Davis being 33 years old. Let's kick it back to the back end of this defense. Corners are in a much better position than they've been in a little while, because Paulson Adebo, it looks like he's going to be that guy opposite Marshawn Lattimore, who's been on this team for a lot of years, and he's kind of been on his own. He's needed a running mate. He's needed some help in the back end of this defense, and Paulson Adebo, a third-round pick, I think is that guy. I thought he was a good selection. I think he's out of Stanford, I believe. He can definitely get the job done, and he showed it last year. If he takes another step forward, that could be a pretty dynamic duo on the back end of this defense. PJ Williams still does a lot of good things. He doubles as free safety a little bit and your nickel corner. And then CJ Gardner-Johnson does, him and PJ Williams do a lot of the same things. So you got, your nickel corner and your free safety kind of locked up with those two guys. And then Marcus May comes in from the Jets. Obviously, Malcolm Jenkins, one of the better safeties in a lot of years. He was one of my favorite safeties throughout his career. I was a big fan of Malcolm Jenkins. A little bit better as an Eagle, but he was quality for this team as well. And then Marcus Williams leaves to the Baltimore Ravens. That's a big loss. But, Marcus May coming in should settle that with those two guys kind of pitching in at free safety. And then Dirty Dan Sorensen's done a lot of good things for the Chiefs. He comes in. He's a quality leader, energy guy, plays on special teams, and he's not going to hurt you in a pinch on your defense. So they're okay there. They could use a safety because I'm not fully happy with PJ Williams and CJ Gardner-Johnson as my starting safety. They can do a lot of good things. They do a lot of similar things, but I'm not super happy with them starting as my starting safety on my defense. That's just how I'm looking at it. So it is a need, but it's down the line. It's not a huge issue. 4th, 5th, 6th round pick. A guy that you can develop as your safety, your future on this defense. So there you go. That's kind of it. We'll see what happens. We'll see what they do at quarterback. I don't have it as a need, obviously, because they have, Winston, Dalton, Ian Book. I've never been a fan of. I don't think that he's going to be a guy at all, but he's on the roster as well. So I don't have it as a need unless you're drafting who you think is going to be your, quarterback of the future. So that's why I sit and wait and see if Sam Howell's available at 49. And if he is, I grab him and then hope that that's your guy, develop him for a season, hope that he's your next, Drew Brees for this team. So that's what I do at the quarterback position, or I think about addressing it in next year's draft, but they traded away their 1st round pick next year. So we'll see. We'll see it. Realistically, Jameis Winston can still be the guy for this team. He's only 28 years old. You could get a solid 5-6 years out of him as your starting quarterback, as long as he is that guy. I think they're hoping that he is, but we'll see if they can resist if Sam Howell's there at 49th overall. So there you go. Let me know what you think in the comments. There's your breakdown for the 2022 New Orleans Saints.